Preparing for the Trump administration's deportation operation is where we start this hour. The CEO of Global Refuge, former White House policy director for Michelle Obama, Krish O'Mara Vignarajah, is here.
We all agree that the immigration system is broken, but we also can't swing to another extreme in terms of mass deportations that would really send a shockwave through every facet of American society. We're talking about the kids that go to school with our children being potentially torn away from their parents. We're talking about, a comment made in terms of Eisenhower's, mass deportation. I think it's just really important to remember that what happened then was widespread racial profiling, lives torn apart, the wrongful deportation of U.S. citizens caught up in enforcement sweeps. Not to mention, a lot of people are going to the grocery store in preparation for their Christmas meal. We're talking about a massive implication when you think about so many immigrants who are critical to our food chain. And so I think that's where it is hard, because I think we have to remember the humanity of all this.
The other thing, Krish, Tom Homan and Donald Trump have another big challenge, which is they need the funds to actually pull off what it is they're suggesting, which means that all of this is going to have to run through Congress, in which case the big question becomes, are there enough Republicans who are willing to say, my constituents did not send me here to Washington, D.C. to fund a mass deportation?
Look, I think we are certainly looking at the fact that you have Congress now in the unified control of Republicans. And I think the question will be, do they view there as a mandate for mass deportations? Because when you look at what Americans actually want, when you drill down, one level, they don't want dreamers who were brought here as children deported. They don't want people who have lived here for a decade or more deported. They don't want those temporary protected status holders who are fleeing countries of conflict deported. And they don't want asylum seekers who came here years ago and are still waiting on a court decision to be deported. And so I think that's where the consensus you're talking about, people believe that those who are convicted of crimes should be deported. But when you go much beyond that, you have a logistical hurdle, you have a prioritization, because it means that you're going to take resources that should go to taking criminal convicts out of society to focusing on people who've been a critical part of our economy, who've been a part of our community out. And so I think that's where I hope members of Congress come together and say, look, let's figure out a reasonable way to approach this so that we protect American citizens while staying true to us being a country, that doesn't do things in excess.
I think when you were clear about the fact that you're talking about a lot of folks who've lived in this country for years, who have no criminal history, who either own businesses or contribute in some way to their community, it all of a sudden becomes very different. So my final question to you is, given all this talk about what a resistance will look like, what an opposition will look like, if someone is at home and they were hair on fire about family separation and they are watching what is forthcoming in this next administration, what do you say to them?
The reality is that mass deportations, depending on how it's conducted, could be family separation of 2025, not 2018. And I think that's where I hope viewers understand that when we demonize immigrants, when we talk about mass deportations, yes, there is a consensus on removing those who have clearly violated the law. But I think that when we think about removing those children, our children's friends, when we think about a neighbor, oftentimes we hear from our clients, there'll be an exception and people say, no, but not that friend of mine, or not that person who helps me, with a certain service. And so I think that's where people have to understand that we are talking about human beings. We're talking about people who fled for their lives to come here because we are a beacon of hope. And I hope that in this season, there is the generosity of the American spirit that I have always believed is there.
Krish O'Mara Vignarajah, thank you so much for spending some time with us.